In this lesson, we'll learn how storyboarding can be utilized to concept out a sequence of events. Alright, so in the last lesson we learned about speed painting, and I did work a little bit more on that speed painting just to get some more of that lava in the image. So feel free to check out the Lesson 7 end file if you'd like. Now, let's talk a little bit about storyboarding. What exactly is a storyboard? Now, a storyboard isn't really a concept sketch, so to speak, for a specific character, vehicle, environment, nothing like that. In my opinion, a storyboard is a concept sketch for a series of events. So planning out a series of events through concept sketches. Now, they capture key moments in that series of events in an interesting way that's also visually appealing. So here is an example of some storyboards. Now, this is for our Infiltrator production pipeline, if you're familiar with that particular series of lessons. So in this storyboard, you can see here that I've sketched out kind of how the camera is going to pan around this small hole, and the infiltrator, the little crab-like creature, is going to appear in the hole and climb out. So I've got notes under each storyboard. Now, this was a very specific, very detailed storyboard, just simply because this was actually for a pipeline project. This was going to be utilized to animate the infiltrator here and basically plan out the entire shot. So now, what I'd like to do with you in this lesson is maybe just sequence out a series of events. We probably won't go into this kind of detail that I did with these storyboards, but that's okay. Remember, what we're doing here is we're using our concept sketching ability to plan out. Maybe it's for a series of illustrations that you're doing. Maybe it's a sequence of images that you're going to be spending a lot of time on each one, and you want to plan out those compositions in advance so you can see how that flow happens from image to image to image. Now, things you want to be careful of, you want to make sure we focus on composition and variation within the compositions. So let's go ahead and hide our infiltrator layer here. I'm going to bring in these little rectangles, and we'll just begin sketching right here on this storyboards layer. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my normal brush here. I believe I'm using this one here, and I've got it set to a 40% opacity and about 4 pixels. So we'll just begin sketching a little scene here. Now, let's just say that there's a man waiting for a bus, and it begins to rain. And we want to basically storyboard out that scene and his reaction to the rain. So let's come in here, and we're just going to kind of draw in a little man here. Maybe he's standing on the curb. Now, really kind of a fairly neutral composition to begin with. Maybe he's just kind of standing there with his hands in his pockets, minding his own business. And we'll set the scene. Maybe there's a park bench here, something like that. Now, you can see I'm not spending a lot of time on these storyboards, just enough time to kind of get the point across. Maybe we've got the curb here. Maybe there's like a little bit of a rain gutter here. And maybe there's a bus stop sign. Maybe some kind of a paper machine. Yeah, maybe there's a trash can or something on the other side of the park bench here. So we can come roughly draw in some background elements if we need to kind of set the stage. You can kind of see maybe there's a park behind him with some buildings and a tree and some things. So we've kind of got the scene set with this first image, kind of a neutral image introducing the character to the audience. He's in the center of the image, front and center here, and he's just kind of waiting for the bus. So now the next image in this sequence, I envision this is where he discovers that it's about to rain on him. So maybe for this one we can kind of bring him off center and crop him out, sort of like so. And we'll just kind of plan out his face really roughly here. And maybe he's starting to see some rain droplets here. As maybe one of them is coming down and it hits his shoulder or something like that. So again, not spending an incredibly insane amount of time on these sketches. Again, this is just the concept for the storyboards. So if these were approved, you'd probably want to come in and maybe polish them up some, really, especially if there's an approved character involved. So maybe we've got kind of the same scene behind him, maybe a tree, hill, building, typical scene here. So, but we've got this raindrop that's come in and it's falling on his shoulder here. So, and he's kind of looking down at it like, oh no, I'm about to get rained on. So the next particular frame here that I'd like to see is maybe we want to vary the composition up here. So maybe this is kind of a top-down image. Maybe he's kind of looking up at the rain as it's coming in. We'll just do a really rough sketch of him here. Maybe his arms are flared out. Something like that. And you can see the rain starting to come in, again, towards the center of the composition. So again, the reason we're varying up the composition so much, you can see we started here, we've come to a close-up, and now we're to an overhead, is we're really, again, creating this sense of visual appeal and the relationship between the images to one another here. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump over here to this next image. You can see I really didn't spend much time at all on that, but it gets the point across. That's kind of the image that we want to create for that particular image in the sequence. So maybe this next one is a little bit like the first one, except it's a little bit closer in. You've got your character and he's trying to cover his head now. Kind of do something sort of like that. But in this frame, I'd like for him to be maybe looking over here at this park bench. And I'll probably use my lasso tool to raise him up just a little bit. There we go. And so he's starting to get rained on. He's reacting by trying to cover his head. But maybe on this park bench over here, he notices an old discarded folded up newspaper. Maybe there's a newspaper, something sitting right there, something that he can use to keep himself dry. And again, set the stage a little bit with some trees, some buildings, things like that. So we've got the basic sequence going already, so we've already got some really nice variation in composition going here. So let's come over here and do a couple more frames. Maybe for this next image, it could be kind of a close-up of his hand as he is sort of reaching for the newspaper here. So we'll just kind of draw a really rough, ugly hand here. And maybe the newspaper is sort of right here. Kind of get a little bit more information that since we're closer up on what's on the paper, maybe some text, some images, some stuff like that. And we'll just kind of draw the edge of the bench, maybe. And to wrap this sequence of events up, maybe we could come in and do kind of almost a complete 360 back to this same composition we started with, which is actually pretty common when you're storyboarding. I've seen that done several times, but maybe for this one, instead of him standing with his hands in his pockets, we've got him standing here now, and now instead he is kind of holding this newspaper over his head. Sort of like that. And again, we got the park bench there. Same basic elements that we had before. Just kind of returning to where we started from. All right, great. So you can see here how by using our concept sketching skills, we can quickly come in and use storyboards to plan out a series of images that maybe are intended to be viewed in sequence. Now, storyboarding is also something that's very, very common when you're looking to animate a scene as well. So animators oftentimes work off of storyboards. So storyboards are actually useful in many different scenarios. I know that I've used them in my past to storyboard out children's books, but that is not by any means the only way that you can utilize a storyboard. So now again, storyboarding in my mind is a sort of concept sketching. Again, the concept being the way we're presenting these images together to convey a message. All right, great. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next lesson. So what's next? What do you do once you've got a concept sketch? Well, you need to polish it up. So let's talk about that in the next lesson.